Yes. Okay. So I don't know what's going on with my web streaming capabilities. I just tried to do a live video real quick, and I kept getting internet connection interruptions. So I'm going to pre-record this, but this is an answer. I got another question from a YouTuber named Gaming for Life. Thanks for leaving a question. It bears a little more than I want to type out, but it's a great question. And so let's get right to it. He says, I just enrolled into school again at age 30. I did the same thing. I'm going for Rad Tech. What are the job prospects once I complete the program? Once I'm done with my associate's degree and pass my boards, I'm going to go straight for my Bachelor of Science degree in imaging science to eventually go to med school and become a doctor. Is this path a decent one in your opinion? Absolutely it is, and here's why. Because to give you a little bit more background on me, I started off in the lab, on the lab side of things. I was a phlebotomist for about 10 years. And I found it very interesting that it correlated a lot with what the physicians do, because they think about what the docs do, right? Patient comes in and says, my stomach hurts, right? And so what does the doctor do? The doctor does a physical exam, then they usually order lab work, and then they usually order imaging. And then they wait for the results to come back and see what it's like. They throw a bunch of darts at a dartboard and see what sticks, right? So from the lab perspective, if you can learn, phlebotomy or med tech, lab tech, that kind of thing, learning all those different labs, lab tests and what they look for was a huge help in me understanding healthcare as a whole. The same thing applies to X-ray or radiology in general. If you understand why an X-ray is ordered and what they're looking for in the X-ray, then as a physician, you wouldn't be making all those goofy mistakes we see on a daily basis where the doctor orders the wrong things. Or, bless their heart, they call us and say, here's my issue, what do I order? And we have to tell them. Your question, is it a good idea, a good path to go from X-ray to Bachelor in Imaging Science to med school? I don't know that you need to go for that Bachelor in Imaging Science. Just make sure that BS in Imaging Science gets you into medical school. And I only say that because if medical school might require traditional degrees, maybe this BS in Imaging Science is considered a traditional degree. Just make sure that that degree is going to help you get into medical school and be valuable. And by valuable, I mean, if you were to get a bachelor's in science and just cover a lot of anatomy and physiology and micro and zoo and pathology, all that kind of stuff, that's definitely going to help you in medical school. My master's degree, for example, was in radiologic science from Weber State. And there were some classes in that program that I was kind of going, what the hell am I doing with this class? One of them was about ultrasound physics. And that does not apply when you're taking a master's in radiology. You're doing it for an administrative purpose, to become an administrator or move up the administrative ladder. Understanding ultrasound physics has nothing to do with radiology management. So what I'm trying to say here is, if you're going to go for a bachelor's of a specifically imaging science, make sure that the medical schools that you want to apply to, and you should apply to as many as you can stand to cast a bigger net, brother, to get in. Just make sure that that's an acceptable degree where you're applying, and it's not a kind of an off-brand or an off-label type of a degree. Job prospects. I've answered this before, but I couldn't find it when I went to look for my answer. We've got a tsunami of baby boomers retiring and heading into healthcare for their healthcare issues. And, that's our largest generation out of all of them. And they're all like a big tidal wave coming in on the shores of healthcare in the hospitals. And we're not set up to handle that. It's probably been about 3 years now. We did a study at the hospital I was working at here in Idaho and determined that we were going to see a 40% increase in patient volumes over the next 10 years because of this incoming baby boomer tsunami. So think about your department. Well, you're not in school yet, but I know departments are already short-staffed. They're short-staffed everywhere. And there's a lot of reasons why. When you let somebody go, it takes forever to get administration to approve the paperwork to hire somebody new, if they even approve it. And then you got to go through the whole hiring process. First you got to put the ad out there and wait a couple weeks, cast your net. Then people apply. You got to give them time to apply. You can't just open a job ad and then close it 3 days later. You want to leave it open for 2 weeks to a month and see what you get. Then they apply. Then you got to set up the interviews. It takes a couple weeks to interview everybody. Then you got to make your selection. Then you got to tell HR. Then they got to decide how much they're going to pay and go back and forth on the pay. And then HR does all their research on the candidate. They don't do it up front or they'd be wasting all their time. If you have 20 people apply for an x-ray job, HR's not going to do 20 reference checks, 20 drug screens, all that stuff. They're going to wait till you pick the candidate. Then they're going to do that stuff, and that takes time. Sometimes it can take a couple of weeks just to get somebody into a drug screen, because if they're going to school or they're working full-time and the local drug screen place is only 8 to 5, then they've got to take time off from work to go to the drug screen. Then you got to wait for the results. Then once everything's back and you can finally officially hire the person, they have to go to new hire orientation at the hospital. And usually that's only on Mondays or Fridays or only once every 2 weeks. And they got to go to that before they can start working in the department. Then they get into the department and there's like 2 to 3 weeks of orientation. At least there should be. You shouldn't ever have to hit the ground running without knowing what's going on. So there will always, well, I won't say there will always be a need for x-ray techs because you never know what's going to happen in the future. But there's a huge demand for them now, and there should be for the next 10 to 20 years because of the incoming fluctuation of the baby boomer generation hitting healthcare and needing all their healthcare that they're going to need. So did I answer them all? I'm on a break, and I'm actually in class right now on a lunch break. They call it an intensive. We're supposed to be on campus this weekend for classes. It was actually supposed to be Thursday, Friday, but because of the coronavirus and everything, they moved it all online, and for some reason they chose Sunday, Monday. Today's Sunday, and I have to sit in front of this camera from 9 to 5. I had to present part of my capstone project starting first thing this morning, and then it's a 20-minute presentation, and 10 minutes at the end is for Q&A. And there's, I don't know, they broke our group up into about 8 people, and so I presented mine for 20 minutes, and 10 minutes was people asking me questions, and then it's time for the next person. So we're on our lunch break now. I've got about another 25 minutes before I have to get back on, but you got to stay on camera the whole time so they know you're really there, because it's mandatory that you participate. So I just wanted to answer your question real quick with a video, because it's a lot easier to get a lot more words out in a shorter period of time, and I don't have to type it all out and misspell everything. So yes, I think it's I think lots of job prospects. And you may need to look around. If you're living like right in the middle of New York City, you may have a harder time finding a job than if you moved out further outside of town. Any I want to say hypercoagulation, but that's making me think of lab work. Where you've got a hyper-dense population, it's always going to be harder to do everything. Get to the grocery store in traffic, you name it. So getting a job's a little bit tougher because you have more people vying for that job. Open your horizon to move out. About 2 years ago here in Idaho, we were short 13 ultrasound techs throughout our 9-hospital system. We needed 13 techs that we couldn't find that wouldn't come here, that wouldn't apply. We weren't getting any hits. There were 13 ultrasound techs short at the time. So there's job openings, plenty of them, and you can always take a traveling gig too, which might be the way to go with the way things are headed. Way more money doing that now. Go ahead and get your bachelor's, that's fine, and then get into medical school. My last thing that I'd say then is just hurry up. Get in, get it done, and move on, because there's going to come a time when you're going to need a break. I've been going to school for, 30 years. I'm finally at the doctorate level. I'm finally looking forward to saying this is my last one. It kind of seems like it all went by fast now, but when you're in the middle of it, it drags on. It takes forever. I got I was a phlebotomist first, and then went to x-ray school for 2 years, and then went to ultrasound school for 2 years. So there's 2 associates there. And then I also have a bachelor's degree of science in psychology from Arizona State. And I used my x-ray license and my bachelor's degree to get into the MSRS at Weber State. So I got my master's there, and all that, all piled up together, got me into my EDD at Nebraska Methodist. And now I'll have an EDD in education and healthcare leadership. So that being said, good luck to you, brother. Hope you are able to get in and get started right away. Take your time. Look for my articles on my blog about how to study and how to pass your boards. It makes the studying much easier. You get more done in less amount of time. What else? How to get into X-ray programs, how to get a job, how to do the interviews. All that is at my blog, theradiologictechnologist.com. Of course, there's lots of videos here on the channel too. Oh, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. I need to let YouTube know that this channel is out there, so they'll start putting me in some of those search results on the sidebar so that more people will see these videos. With that said, thanks for stopping by.